Hey guys, TC Made with TC Gaming. Wanted to bring you another video in our RPG series. This is a little bit more SQL Server stuff again. So, like I said earlier, if you're not interested in this type of stuff, you can skip these and you can wait until the other RPG series picks back up. Just trying to get as much content out as I can for people who have questions about things as I go. With that being said, when I get done with this video, I'm also going to try and knock out another 2 quick videos to answer some questions that I have in some other series that I've been doing. So you'll see a couple of posts that come up that really don't have anything to do with this, but we will be getting back into the main topics on these very, very soon. So just bear with me. I'm just trying to get it all knocked out, but it'll be there soon. Today, what we want to talk about a little bit is someone asked a question about being able to use a setup for having like a user account, so a username, password type scenario, and then things that would be related to that user's account, like characters that they have created and stuff along that line. So this what we'll do is we'll build something real simple, high level, just to give you proof of concept type of stuff. And you have to understand also that some of the things that I'm talking about in here you would actually have to do on the executable side of your program, like in a login form in your Unreal Engine project, where you're going to pass a username or an account name to your database server, and you're going to say if that user exists in this table and they've given you the right password, then we're going to go ahead and let them get other data from the server. So that's going to have to happen in code on the front end, but in the back end side where you would store that data can certainly take place in here. So what we want to do is we're going to go into our database that we created before. We had our RPG database. We'll just go over here. I have that highlighted, so I'm going to hit new query. And what that'll usually do when it creates a new query, it'll actually create it against the database that's open. So you can see there that I have a query that just popped up there, and I can go in here and I'm just going to hit Control V to paste in some stuff that I had in my buffer, and then I'll explain it to you. So what this command up here does, it's create table, and then the table, it's going to be users, and it's in the DBO, which is the default schema, dbo.users. And then in here you're going to tell it what fields you want to create and what type they are, and then some characteristics about those. So in this case here, we're going to create some fields in our database. Databases and tables, they have columns or fields. Fields are basically the intersection of a column and a row of data. But what we're going to do is we're going to create a user ID that is of type integer. So it's just a number, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. And then a username, which is a varchar, variable character type, so it could be alphanumeric or whatever. And we're going to give them a little bit more room here, so we'll call it 25. And then we're going to have a password, or PWD, also varchar. We'll give that 25. And a user role, if you wanted to have user roles in your system, what you could do is you could basically say, for example, if it was an online game and you wanted to grant people the ability to either be customers or administrators or, whatever. You could have roles in here for that. And if you didn't want them, just don't put them in here. And the onPrimary command here just basically means that it's going to be created on the primary file header in the disk there. But I'm going to see real quick. I'm going to pause this for a second. I'm going to see if I can blow this up some so it's easier for you to see. Let me see if there's a setting for that. Okay, turns out that was pretty easy to actually get that on there. If you're working in SQL Server, you can hold down the Control key and just scroll your mouse wheel and it'll zoom in and zoom out. So, fantastic stuff. But anyway, I wanted to blow this up so you can actually see it. So again, our command is create table dbo.users. We're going to create user ID, which is an integer. And this is the really important part. It's not null, meaning we can never have an empty user ID. And the identity keyword in here means that this is going to be the keyword, the primary. It's not the primary, but it's the thing that is going to be unique in here, and this will auto increment when you use this identity. So all we do is once we have our command in here, we're just going to hit execute, and it should say commands completed successfully. And over here, if we go to our tables now, we can right click on this and hit refresh, and now we'll have this DBO users table, and those columns that we specified have now been created. Okay, so I'm going to zoom out there, scroll that down a little bit. Now what we can do, now that we've created this, and this is, well, I'll probably keep this out for a sec because we'll create some other tables in there that'll have that identity field in them. But if I wanted to go in here now, I can say select top 1,000 rows. Of course, this will be empty. There's nothing in here. And we're going to go, just showing you that that's empty. Now I'm going to go right click on here and say script table as insert to, and we'll get a new query editor window for that. So when you use the insert into command, this would be the name of the table, so dbo.users, and then the fields that we want to put something into. And you notice that the user ID is not here, right? It didn't generate anything for the user ID because that's going to be automatically incremented. So if I said insert into DBO users, my username, password, and user role, all I have to do now is supply values for these things in whatever form these are in. So the first value for username, I'll just put in there, you know, tcmabe, and you want to put these in quotes, single quotes. And then for the password, I'm going to tell you, this is not the way that you would do this for your password. What you would want to do for a password normally is you would want to create this in a way that it's going to get encrypted. And you could use different encryption types. There's something in here called SHA-256, which you could use. And notice I'm also stripping these out. There should be field 1, comma, field 2, and then another comma, and then field 3. So I'm just going to get these cleaned up. So the last part here would be user role. And I'm just going to put in here user role for me. I'll just put in client or whatever. So now that I've populated values in here, what I was saying about this password, typically what you would do is on your end of the system where you're creating the user, you could put an algorithm in there to add a hash token to something. And I'll show you that in a second. What you would do though is you would take the username, the password that's supplied by the user, take their password, hash it through something like a SHA-256, and spit out a key that would then get stored in your database. You don't want to store their actual password in there. You want to store a hash of it. The other thing that's really, really popular and recommended for a password in particular is to use what's called a salted hash. And a salted hash is where you add some keyword consistently to the front end or the back end of every username or every password that gets put into your system. So a salted hash, like for example, you could literally use the word salt, and you would take the salt plus user password, hash through SHA-256, and then put that in your table or in the field name of password. What that means is that somebody not only has to guess what the user's password would be, but they also have to guess that you added the word salt to it. So just replace salt with anything. Could be rainbow, could be blue sky, could be whatever. You could put your own thing in there. So in this case, I'm just using the word password just for the sake of the fact that this isn't real data. So now you just go say execute, and it'll say one row affected. Now if I go back to my DBO users again and hit select top 100 rows, you'll see I now have a person in here. So I've created an account in the system. I was in my game and it said, you know, I'm logging in for the first time, create account, sign up, whatever. I hit that, and then I take the values that are stored in that or that are given to me in that login window, and I store them in the database. Okay, well the important part of this is this user ID for what we're going to do here in a second. So let's say I've created that, and again, just let me show you what I'm saying about this password thing. So there's an algorithm in here, and the command for this is called hash bytes. So I'll just do hash bytes, and then left parenthesis, and then what you would do is tell it the type of algorithm you want. So single quote SHA underscore 256, or is it SHA? It might be SHA-2. I forget what some of these, I haven't used these in a while myself, but so if I SHA-256 and then a comma, and then whatever the thing is that you can see up here, it's telling me it wants an input for the varchar. So I would do that, and then one more right there. That should get it, let's say. No, it's not grabbing it. This, I don't know what the name of this is. Let me pause this real quick. I'll come right back. Okay, I didn't want to do that for me because of the way that I had that in there. It wouldn't actually use the password field, so it was blanking out. But anyway, it is the right thing. It's hash bytes, left parenthesis, single quote, SHA-2 underscore 256, single quote, right parenthesis, and then whatever it is that you're hashing. So in this case, I'm just hashing the word password just to show it here. But what it does is it turns this into a key, right? So nobody would be able to guess that that was the word password. It would be a lot tougher to crack that. So that's what you would store on the server. Then when the person asks for the authentication, they would say, hey, I'm logging in with my username and my password is password. And then you would hash this again, and then you would say, does that hash match the one that's stored in the password field in the server? If the answer is yes, then we go ahead and proceed into our session and download data that's related to our character or to our client. So that's just a real basic example. Again, this is high level stuff. I'm not trying to tell you that's the best security model in the world or the way to do this. I'm just giving you proof of concept. So now that we have an actual user in our system, the other thing you might have is something like a characters table. So let's go create table, and this time we'll call it characters with an E. And in here, what we'll do instead of user ID, we'll call this character ID, because we're in the character table. So this will be the ID of our unique character. And then in here we'll have a character name. And you don't need passwords and user roles or anything like that. But what we do want to put in here is one other thing, which is called, and I'll put it up in this first block here. We're going to have in here the user ID. So the user ID of this will be the same as the one that's on here. So this is user ID, and that is going to be, actually we're going to put that in bracket or square brackets here. So the user ID field, and then the type of that is going to be the same as what we have in the other one. Oops, I keep forgetting to hit the shift key, or the, yeah, I'm in the wrong field. So we got brackets there. So see how our user ID here is an integer and it's not null. So in this case, it can be null. So over here, it's just going to be user ID and int for integer. We do lowercase int. And then at the end of this, we'll just put a comma, and we'll hit execute. And now we should have another table in here if we refresh this. And we're going to have one called characters, and we have the columns in there for character ID, user ID, and character name. So if I were in my character creation software again, I would be able to go in here and say I want to add a new character to the system. So I'm going to say script table is insert to, and you would pass all these things from your code also. And again, remember I said we're just going to pass values here. So in this case, we want to use our user ID. So user ID would be 1, and the new character name we want to put in here, which we would again do from our software, from the front end side, would be something like, you know, my new character. And you could have all kinds of other things in here too with that character, like that character could have some other information there if you wanted it to, but you would typically leave this alone and just have a simple thing like that. Then what you could have is specifications about the character. So you could say in, let me execute this real quick. If I go back here now and say select top 1000 rows, you'll see that I have character ID 1 is owned by user ID 1, and he's got my new character. So if I wanted to create more characters, the user ID would stay the same, and these would be different. And you'll see if I go in here and I just go back and refresh this again, now I have character ID 1, character ID 2. These are unique, so I can never have another character ID 1, but I could have my new character in here multiple times with different character IDs. And this user, you could specify this user could never have two characters named the same way or whatever, you know. But those are rules that you can put in place on your side. So all we're doing is just storing a reference in here. This is what makes these relational databases. And what you could do in a relational database is if I did a new query over here, remember we went to our design editor, I could come in here and say I want to get the users table and the characters table, and I want to link these on user ID. So I'll just drag a link over here, and I can say I want to get the user ID, username, and the role of that person, and then get whatever characters ID and character names they have specified. And if I just say OK to that and run it, you'll see that TC Mabe, user ID 1, is a client, and he owns character 1 and 2, which is my new character and my other new character. Now, what I was saying on the other side of this is you could have a character, additional character data, and in the character table where you had this other data stored, like character attributes or whatever, that's where you could keep track of things like your character's hit points, current level, number of experience points that they have, whatever the state of the character is with as far as like their mana and their their whatever you want to store, all those different things. And all you have to do is say these are the things that pertain to character ID 1 or character ID 2. And whenever you do an update and you save, you just write an update to this. So we can try and simulate this real quick. And what I'll do is I'll say in that table, let's do it. I'm going to back some of these out real quick. I should have probably saved that one because that was the one where we're going to look up the stuff. But this, we'll leave it with these two characters. And what we'll do is we'll create another table, and we'll just call this character details for now. And on this one here, we'll just call this, so you don't really need to have unique anything in this one because this is really just storing properties of any character. What you wouldn't probably want to do though is store the same character ID more than one time in here. So you could leave the character ID also being a not null in here. Of course, you wouldn't want to make it an identity. You'd make it so that it was something that had to be populated, but it shouldn't be duplicated, so it could be just a primary key. So we'll do it that way. We'll make it an integer, not null, and it's not going to be an identity field. And then the user ID, if you wanted to, you could keep that in there, but it really doesn't matter. And even the character name doesn't matter because we'll get that from the other table data. So let's just say our character ID. And then in here, like say, maybe we want to say, we'll say strength, which is going to be an integer. And then maybe we'll do, current health. And we'll just say that that's going to be, whoops, I should have put brackets around this. So current health, and that's also going to be, that's actually a float. I think we can put floats in here. We'll see. Whoops. Keep hitting the wrong key on here. Let's see if it'll take a float. So we'll do strength as an integer, current health as a float. And then we'll do one more for now. We'll just say like experience. And we'll make experience an integer, because that's going to be a whole number. int, and we'll execute that, and then we'll go up here and refresh this. And so now we have character details, and if I wanted to insert character details on a character, I would say script table is insert into, and again this would just be one of your save routines from the other one. So in the character details, we're going to specify what our character is. So our character, let's just put these on character 2. And then let's say character 2's strength right now is 16, and our current health is 46, let's say, and our experience points, let's say we have I don't know, let's do 1250 points. Okay, so if I hit execute on there, now I have in my character details, if I go and select that, character 2 currently has a strength of 16, current health of 46, and experience of 1250. And if I wanted to get associated details to that, I could go back and say, who owns character ID 2. So you could also go this way. I could go back this way and say design query and editor. and get other tables that are related to this. So this character detail has a character ID. Well, characters also has a character ID, and then that character ID has a user ID, so I could go, okay, well, that must have come from the users table. And that's kind of why you use, in most cases, you'll use something in here where the ID is based on the table it's in. Because I can say here, character ID gets linked to character ID, and I want to see what that character name is, right? And I want to see maybe a little bit of specs about the user who owns it, so I'll go over here and link to user ID also, and see what their username and role is. So I'll do that, say OK here, and then just execute that. Now you can see that character 2 has a strength of 16, current health of 46, experience of 1250. Its name is My Other New Character, owned by TC Mabe, who is a client. Okay, so that's how all this kind of stuff works. Now, the other thing you can do is in here, if you like this type of thing where you want to look this up all the time, or if you want, whatever queries you write, you can go in here, and at the top of this, you can say create view, and whatever this view would be. So this is character details. I'll call this character detail and underscore VW, or actually most people would probably put the VW here, so VW underscore character details, let's say, and we just say as. So create this view, VW underscore character details, as this select statement that we just built over here. And again, I can roll, I'm trying to make it so you can see these. Probably the easiest thing to do would be to bump this down here and tab it in for you, so you can see what we're doing there. Again, we're selecting the top 1,000 records, and from the character details table, and as a result, we're specifying that we have character details, character ID, character details.strength, character details current health. And the reason we do this character details piece here is because we also are selecting something from the characters table. So that's got its own prefix, characters.character name, and then we're also getting something from the users table. So we have users.username and users.userRole. And then we're specifying in here what type of join, how they can connect to each other. So in order for the characters to be represented, they have to join where the character detail.character ID is equal to the characters.character ID. And then from there, we're joining the users table where the character user ID is equal to the user ID, and that gives us back all these pieces of information. So now that I wrote the create view, I can go ahead and execute that. And where views would store is down here. So if I open this up, I'll have a view called character details. Well, what that's nice for is if you want to look something up now, I'll just go back here, and we'll get rid of some of these other things real quick. We're not going to create any more tables in this session. So now that I have a view, all I have to do is just select top 1,000 rows from that view, and it'll automatically build that statement for me again and then pull this back. So it makes it pretty handy to just have a view already. And then in here you can have where clauses. And a where clause specifies that you're looking for something that matches a certain set of criteria. So you could say, give me the details from the character where the username equals TC Mabe, and if I had more than one character stored in here, it would pull up all of my characters, all my account information, whatever attributes or stats or whatever I have for those, amount of hours I've played the games, last time I logged in, whatever. Okay, so that's the basic idea behind these relational databases and everything. The relationships, again, are built in the fact that a user has a user ID, and we're using the user ID in the character table to specify that this user owns that character. And then over here we're using the character character's character ID to specify that these details belong to that character ID. Okay, so hopefully it gives you a little bit more information there. Again, like I said, one of the users that asked about, could you use this for managing that type of stuff? And hopefully this gives you a little bit more help understanding the general concept about what we're doing here. Again, my name's TC Mabe with TC Gaming. I'm going to be punching out a couple of quick videos and then getting back finally into the RPG pickup where I left off last week, which is where we're going to actually talk about how to add update things in your character, like updating your experience points, updating your health, updating your taking health away, things like that. And then after that video, I have planned to get back into adding and removing tags and checking for when tags have been added or removed, how to react to that. And then from there, we'll get into the other fun stuff of actually building some stuff where we can do some melee combat and things. So again, thanks for watching. My name's TC Mabe, and I will catch you in an upcoming video. Take care. Stay safe.